cooking, good looking. Good day to you, Matt here, and this is day 17 of 30 days of intuitive eating, the journey of tuning into and listening to the body's natural wisdom so that we can stress less, ditch the diet, and trust and relax into our body's natural wisdom. It's a beautiful thing. And this 30-day journey was created by Megan McElroan with Intention Inspired. And we've just been moving through this journey together so we can learn the healthy habits, reflect with journal prompts, take on little micro daily challenges, all to just cultivate that body awareness. And today, day 17, is a rest day. Yes. So I have a special treat for you guys today. One of my heroes, one of my best friends, someone who I really look up to because she just gets in there and does the work, and she's been doing it for some time now. The one and only Jen Gens. Jen heard that we were doing intuitive eating, and so she offered to share some things. And so we just did the classic podcast style interview, and it was a blast.
Like, wow.
Feel that?
Yeah.
I first got to know Jen through dance. It was both our first day at Ecstatic Dance, and it was just like a nice connection. And since then, oh my goodness, I mean, we've spent a lot of time surfing, camping, and just looking at the stars and questioning life. And Jen continues to surprise me, especially when she sent over her bio and I was like, what? You've done what? So Jen Gens, she is a holistic empowerment and relationship coach who guides women to release their fears of the past, cultivate unshakable confidence, and call in aligned, soulful connections. She is an award-winning speaker. She has a bachelor's degree in interpersonal and nonverbal communications from Boston College. She is also a certified nutritional health coach, certified Raja Yoga and Ayurvedic Wellness teacher, and meditation teacher. She has extensively studied psychology, fitness, the science of habit change, intuitive eating, disorder eating recovery, and an array of alternative healing and mindfulness modalities. Whew. And that's just a nugget of the gem that Jen is. So without further ado, please enjoy this wonderful conversation with Jen Gens.
You're so dope. You're so dope. You're so
We are so dope.
inspiring.
Oh my gosh.
We
That's
are
you.
so dope.
Just to give peeps a better idea of who you are. I got to know you through the waves, through adventures, through dancing, through a lot of play, and in all of that, continue to be inspired by who you are and how you lift everyone up in this world, and just your curiosity and how much you just like hands-on experience. You just get curious with something and you just dive in. And then you share that. You find what's true for you and how it might serve others. And you are so gifted at sharing those things that ring true and just putting it out there for other people and just take it or leave it. And when it comes to what the Intention Inspired fam has been jamming on through the intuitive eating, you have explored many different focuses that can be so helpful in this, in what we're focusing on. So with that, I'm curious to know a little bit more about your background with your food, your relationship with food, your body, and the relationship between listening to your body and how that informs your decisions when it comes to food, and just in general, you know, what you found works when it comes to intuitive eating, intuition in general. There's so much to explore there. So
Yeah.
yeah. Is there
Yeah.
anything that
Well,
has popped out when you kind of explored some of those questions?
yeah. Oh, many things. Yeah. So many places, so many good places to start. Thank you for the intro reflection, first of all. And yeah, thanks for having me just to talk about this topic. It's something that I am so inspired about and passionate about, and it has been a long journey. So, first and foremost, what I would just like to say to those listeners out there or viewers is that this journey is a practice, and practice makes progress. Because, as so many of us know, the journey with food feels perhaps like it might need to be perfection, and such as life, right? But really, life can't be perfect, right? And of course, there's harm when we try to actually strive for perfection in many ways. And of course, then there's those, like endurance athletes or, pro athletes that are regimented and, stick to their routines and things like that. But there is a balance, and that's really what I'm talking about. There's totally a balance. My journey with food, as everyone's, started as an infant. And I know from studying psychology and people like Freud, for instance, that's where my certain habits have started. And so what's interesting is we can look at the present moment and where we're at. And that is so important. We need to know where we're at. And it's important to know what we want. And it's also really important to know where we've been. Mm. And not only that, but to honor where we've been. I'm a huge advocate of honoring the past. And for most of us, our habits and belief systems have started from when we were super young, mm-hmm. and when our brain was developing, mm-hmm. particularly around the age of 7. In human development, that's when we start to understand, this or that. It's the what we call the age of conservation. So it's when kids actually can decipher between things. It's also when we start to understand ourselves in the world differently, and also start to kind of intake this like perception of who we are and judgment. So there's so much to be said. But bringing it back to the present, it's always nice to know where we're at right now. And I'm a big advocate of taking out the shame. Like, the shame spiral is real, especially when it comes to food and body. Yeah. And it's so important to align with what you know in this present moment. So there's so many places I can, dive into and take this conversation. Mm-hmm. But for me, the journey of eating was not always intuitive. It had a lot to do with self-soothing, which is very common for most of us, right? Eating for entertainment. Yeah. But it goes beyond that. Taking a look at like when we're trying to check out versus check in. And in terms of checking in, certain tools that I found that have been really fun and playful have been bringing in this element of sensuality and understanding that element. Nice. And that doesn't mean to mean sexuality, just sensuality. literally bringing in all of the senses.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I just kind of laid a bunch of groundwork there, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm wondering where you want to take it.
Awesome. Love this. So I would love to get a little more crystal on what you had mentioned on the importance of where we've been, where we are, and what we want. And then we can bring in the practices and the exercises to help us in the moment to recognize, ooh, past pattern, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go. Micro notice, accept, little adjustment, and move on. And so I'm curious, perhaps there's a real life example of something where you've noticed something that has happened
Yes.
in the past, and maybe something that you've worked with, and how that maybe had changed where you wanted to go.
Yeah. So again, I'll just bring it back. This is a practice. Practice makes progress.
Love
So
that.
it's not about getting it perfect.
Hmm.
It's about the desire to want something. And earlier I quoted want because that's a deep topic in itself of understanding what it is that we truly want, right? A lot of us don't even believe we know what we want.
Yeah.
And I believe that we actually are able to give ourselves what we believe we deserve
Nice.
versus what we want, right?
Mm.
It's actually like past that. It's like, how much do we deserve? We believe in something and that we deserve, we actually are allowed and we are open to allow receiving something
Mm.
in.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So, bringing it back to your question though, the first thing that popped into my mind is stress and fear. And as you know, I'm a big fan of understanding fear, and it's not necessarily to become fearless, or maybe less fearful, but people are like, I just want to get rid of fear completely. And I actually don't totally agree with that. I think fear is a really incredible tool for our psyche to understand ourselves. It is actually our primal brain that is doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I could get into the neuroscience, but really it's like giving us cues and responses to our environmental stimulus
Mm-hmm.
to keep us alive,
Yeah.
right? Survival. And again, I could get kind of more into the nitty gritty, like science that's going on in your body. But what's really important to understand is in order to really be present and be in this present moment, it's about calming down the nervous system.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
about allowing all of that, those flags, right? Alert system mechanisms that we're intaking. It's not that we're not necessarily listening to them, but it's about saying thank you to our primal brains, right? Thank you to our nervous system, honoring that, and then coming back to present of what is the energy I want in this moment. Again, this is a practice, right? It's all about what I call the divine catalyst. It's that, witnessing moment.
Yes.
I'm doing that thing. I'm overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
So to bring it back to your question, for me, I have my own business and I can get overwhelmed. And this is something that I have been very accustomed to in the past. This feeling of having to get it all done or getting everything right in order to win someone's attention or to win praise, right? These are old beliefs. This is an old belief system. This is an old BS,
Yeah.
right? BS belief system. And so what's kind of an interesting tool for me now is divine catalyst when I'm getting overwhelmed, to recognize I'm getting overwhelmed, to be aware and in that awareness. Now we actually have to be willing to be aware and willing to actually cultivate that witness of ourselves, and then ask, am I hungry or am I uncomfortable? Because for me, and from my background, even all the way back to infancy, my self-soothing tactic, what actually helps me calm down in the past and literally grounds my energy, has been eating. And this is common for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very calming. Again, there's lots of science in there. And also on an energetic level, it's very grounding. And it also is an immediate soothing response.
Mm-hmm.
And it can also be a numbing agent, a checking out. And I love this question. I'm not sure which week it is, but it's, what am I really feeling right now? And that is such an important divine witnessing question to ask ourselves in these moments. And that goes, there's, again, like so many avenues, right? Like, what do you actually not just need, right? Because we need food, but what on a deeper level are you desiring?
Mm-hmm.
Not just what do you want, right? But what do you really believe you're allowed to receive? And that goes back oftentimes to the past of what we believe about ourselves, our belief system that we were taught, that we were told we were this way or that, or that we are, had to do X, Y, and Z to receive A, B, and C, if that makes sense, right? To receive respect, to receive attention, to receive love.
Yeah.
It really goes back to understanding how we actually, what we believe in ourselves to be, right? Our own values and our own belief system that we know we are. And that's why it's so important to go inward, because then it's this process in life of like seeking external validation. And it's the same with food. We're like reaching, searching, longing. But really, in taking food, this is one of, if not the second most intimate act that we can actually receive as a human being.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just, let that digest for a minute, right? There's so much, there's so much there.
Yeah, there really is.
And it's like the act of eating and mindfully eating, it all comes back to not only what we believe in ourselves, but how we view our environment and what we believe about our environment. But it's perspective. The fruits on the trees, the kale bursting from the ground, all of it, these are literal gifts. Like, we are gifts of this earth. And I believe that about our food as well. It is an intimate act of receiving and taking in what this Mother Earth has been providing and provides for us. Now, is that always easy to like completely have this incredible, in-depth gratitude practice every time we eat? No, it's not necessarily easy, but is it possible? Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious what those things are that have helped you to experience those divine catalysts. Like when that happens, is there something you can attribute that to? I'm sure it's pretty layered, but what has been helpful for you to take that pause, to slow down, to feel deeper into why you're doing or not doing what you're doing when
Mm.
it comes to food, and how, what that process is and what you want it to be? What's that catalyst of, or where does that come from? What cultivates that?
Yeah. I think, again, it's coming back to gratitude, and I'll just keep saying it. It's a practice. It's a practice. So does this mean I never just like get so hungry that I need to like grab something and shove it into my mouth? Like, no, I do that too, right? Like, I'm so hungry. I'm
Okay.
calorically deficient. I like need something now,
Yeah.
like that happens, right?
Yeah.
And so just in those moments, it's recognizing, did I push myself a little too far? Could
Yeah.
I have taken a break a little bit earlier? Did I skip lunch? Right. Other tools that have been helpful for me in the past have been having an intake schedule, an eating schedule. And that was actually brought to my attention specifically when I was healing from SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So it was actually not intuitively eating for a long period of time. It actually thrown off the balance of my gut flora. And so that was really helpful. But that can also be a bit detrimental for some people. I absolutely recognize that, to have too strict of a schedule, and that can not be good. So it's really about who you are, the listener, and where you're at. But the biggest thing that has been so helpful for me is actually just dedicating and devoting to this practice of mindful eating and slowing down. Slow down. My tendency personally is to, like I mentioned, like get it all done, right? Like there's
Yeah.
always so much to do.
Yeah.
And just recognizing in those moments when I'm chewing super fast, right? That is one of the best divine catalyst moments,
What's
is
that?
I recognize I'm like not just breathing with my food and I'm just chomping real fast because I got to get to the next thing. And then I realize I'm missing this intimate act that has been provided for me by the earth. And by the way, how privileged and grateful I am to even have the opportunity to have beautiful food available to me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Like it would be a disgrace to not be so grateful in those moments.
Mm.
So for me, it's taking a few breaths before a meal. And I actually like to hold. I know you've seen me do this. Like I literally just like hold my bowl. I
Yeah.
love eating out of bowls,
Yeah.
by the way. Yeah. I just hold my bowl and take a look at my food. And you literally just breathe it in. Taking a breath, taking a pause, coming into this moment and seeing it with your eyes. And the act of bringing online all of your senses. So smelling, taking that breath, visualizing, hearing it, if it's like crackling, crispy still, crispy crackle. I like to do that with cacao. I'll like
Mm.
listen to it for a moment
Mm-hmm.
and just be in awe of where this all came from.
Yeah.
I have a gratitude practice that I like to do, that where I actually think about, with my mind's eye, I actually consider it a bit of a spiritual practice. It's definitely a spiritual practice. where I not only give thanks to the hands and the actual food, but the time. It's like spinning back the wheel,
Hmm.
right? I'll like see the sun shines and moons, and it's like you're going back in time and you're just thanking this process. And then you realize, like, oh, well, you could just wind back the clock as much as you want. And it's all like, it's all that wave, it's all cyclical, and it's riding that wave. But really just taking in a moment to recognize like what went in, what resources went into actually making this meal in front of us, in front of me,
Yeah.
has been really powerful in bringing in and understanding the elements that went in to this meal. And I am graciously and gratefully taking that into my body. Wow, what a gift. These are gems.
Yeah.
So in terms of that sensuality, right? That intimacy, it's like then we taste, then we process, and with each bite, I like to breathe while I'm eating and allowing myself to really slow down. And something that I love to do is make a sound when
Mm.
I'm eating. And like who cares? You can hear you. You're enjoying life, right? It's about enjoying it and taking it in
Yeah.
and receiving, knowing that you are allowed to receive this epic, delicious meal or whatever it is, even if it's like, like I don't know, like a candy bar or something. Like,
Whatever.
not
Yeah.
that I'm, yeah, not that I'm suggesting eating candy bars, but if you've restricted yourself from eating fried chicken for 10 years and then you had a plate of fried chicken, you better believe that is a spiritual experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mentioned the mm sound
Hmm.
because what that's doing is it's actually activating our digestion and our neurotransmitters in our gut, specifically the one called GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter, and actually helps with the rest and digest system.
Mm.
So to actually slow down and enjoy your food, you're actually doing more for your body in
Mm.
intaking, and you'll actually get more pleasure out of taking in food.
Mm. That's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
And I trust there are so many things like that, so many benefits of slowing down, connecting with the food. I love that idea of of, or that perception, that perspective rather, of just treating it like a sacred, sensual, spiritual practice, which when we eat 3, 5, 10 times a day, it can quickly, for me, become less and less of a sacred experience. And especially when I'm rushed and I just need to like get the calories in because I got to do the thing.
Yeah.
But how beautiful when there is a little bit of a pause and an appreciation and knowing all the reasons, like how nourishing that will just be for my body, for everything. So what was it that inspired you? Was there like a certain thing that happened to you health wise to like focus up
Yeah.
on this, or just,
Oh, yes.
yeah, what?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And this circles kind of around to the question of I am whole, or the statement, the intention inspired statement, I am whole.
Mhm.
And you ask, what does it mean to be enough just as you are? And I love that incredible depth. For me, I never really understood that I was enough. And that has to do, again, going kind of deeper in the past of my psyche and what I was taught, and that deeper psychology.
Yeah.
And for me, There was an inconsistency of understanding that I was unconditionally loved. And this is something that I certainly don't blame anyone for now, but it was a challenging navigational piece to my life. And um, so in in order to cope, as mentioned, I used self-soothing tactics of food, right? To feel fulfilled and to feel like I had enough, right? That I was enough, but more so that I was safe. So
Yeah.
for me, it's like, I feel safe, I feel safe, I'm safe, which makes sense, right? If I feel overwhelmed and stressed, or for anyone out there, that they would reach for food because it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel safe, my needs are taken care of.
Yeah.
And so for me, I developed food soothing, self-soothing dependency pretty early, like real early on in age. And that was just the way of my life. I kind of just assumed everyone was like that. And I know that is the case for many. And then when I was probably about middle school, I started to become more aware of my body in terms of its changes, and it was changing a little more quickly than the other girls. And also, I was bullied as a kid and told by people that I was supposed to trust that, there was something wrong with my body. And from there, I went through a series of traumas, but most notably, one was a sexual assault when I was about 13. And from there, it just, blossomed, or I shouldn't say blossomed, but, erupted into a full on eating disorder where I was not only intaking food as a self soothing tool, I was also purging food as a self-soothing tool, which actually stimulates the phrenic nerve and calms people down as well. So, from there, as well as the constructs of our society, I felt like I needed to fit into a certain box that I saw on billboards and magazines in order to be enough. And, you know, constantly searching for wholeness, but I wasn't really I certainly wasn't using the right tools. But I was, going through a process of searching and essentially giving myself what I thought I deserved, right? Again, bringing it back to that belief system.
Nice. Yeah.
And so, what's interesting, and I don't have any statistics right out in front of me right now, but what was interesting was recognizing in high school that most of my closest friends had eating disorders. And it was so common,
Mm-hmm.
not just the females, it was also the males too. And I know there's all kinds of statistics on this, unfortunately, how many people in our culture have disordered eating in their lives. And it was, I eventually learned how to not purge, but the mental aspects were still there of not feeling good enough and essentially blaming my body for so much of this, and really just totally disconnecting with the actual feeling of my body, of what my body was feeling. And it wasn't until I really started getting into yoga that I started to heal on my own. And of course, I say on my own, but I was studying with masters and teachers and getting certifications. Um, and, you know, when I started to study Ayurveda, I started to understand the energetics of food, and not only food, but of my environment
Mm-hmm.
and within, and understanding certain tools like um, eating until your first burp right? Your stomach will fill up, and then there's a certain amount of air in your stomach. And as you fill up, the air will then be released. You won't feel completely full, but it'll be like, satiated.
Yeah.
And for me, I have a much slower digestive system. So I never really knew when I was full, or like would just disconnect from that and keep eating. And I mean, this is still, again, totally practice, but if you can actually witness that first burp, that is a really helpful tool in understanding, okay, I'm just going to pause and breathe and just slow down. So getting into yoga, and really, really more deeply getting into yoga about 9 years ago. And well, I guess it was much more than that, like 12 years ago, but that's when I really started getting into the Raja Yoga Ayurvedic Wellness, becoming certified, studying with a master. She's amazing. Myra Lewin, if you're interested in checking her out, she wrote a book called Food Freedom, actually. And she uses Ayurvedic tools to understand the energetics of food and how to create more freedom.
Wow.
But that was really like that first pivotal point. And I really got steeped into that. And then eventually I realized that I still needed professional help to really understand my past and understand those triggers and traumas that made me feel unworthy and objectified and no pun intended, but like a piece of meat. And, I know this is so common in our culture and our society. So it wasn't until I was actually in psychology class studying psych where I got super triggered in a human development class. And I realized, wow, I need to go and seek professional help. And that's when I started getting into radically open dialectical therapy, which has been incredible. And that was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, lots. It's been quite a journey. But since then, again, just kind of bringing in the more, just like there's such a process of surrendering, surrendering and bringing in this idea of I am enough. I am worthy. I am whole. I love that. I am whole. And it really is a perspective and a mindset shift to really start to allow ourselves to believe that we are so much more than what our old belief system has taught us in our culture of consumerism and our culture of trying to fit us into these boxes in order to reach constantly for something outside of ourselves to make us feel whole. The wholeness starts in here. And it sometimes takes a whole journey of being completely broken down and feeling like a POS, right? To really come back to ourselves and realize, wow. But it's all a gift.
Yeah.
It's all a gift, especially, in terms of empathizing with others and really coming home and calling in all parts of ourselves home.
If you could go and give 13, 14-year-old Jen some love, what would you say or do? How would you hold a younger Jen so that she could potentially come to understand this and avoid some unnecessary suffering?
Yeah, I love this question. So I actually have done this practice quite a bit. And I do this with multiple parts of myself. And by that, I mean from the past, right? And that really is this beautiful practice of calling ourselves in, calling all parts and really letting all of our parts, the bullied parts, the parts that were told they weren't enough, the ones that were like picked on and literally like pinched and grabbed and whatever, you know, letting all of those parts of ourselves in time on the team, and like
Hmm.
like like
Yeah.
you are, I'm not going to abandon you, right? This goes back to understanding our fear, right? What's our deeper fears? Like, I'm not going to abandon you. You're actually, it's like hard for me not to cuss on here, but like
Feel
you
free.
are okay, like you are dope as fuck, like get on in here, you know. And at first, like those parts of myself were like, me? Like,
Mm.
yes, you,
Mhm.
because those parts of ourself have actually been through the darkness. And how badass is that?
Right.
Right? Like they have been through the hardest moments of our life. Like, wow, like we have so much incredible, juicy knowledge to learn from those parts of ourselves. So I don't want to just like banish those parts. No, no. I want to bring them into my A team, which, you know, of course, but also learn from those parts. And so what when I first started getting into this practice, I would light a candle. It's a great starting point, or just a practice of doing, is lighting a candle, and specifically for that particular moment in time, and allow that part of yourself to feel honored. And I say that because, you know, just like kids, and we were kids, right? Everybody just wants to feel heard, seen, respected, ultimately accepted, and unconditionally loved, loved without condition. And so when we can honor those past parts of ourselves and let those parts of ourselves know that I hear you, I see you, I hold you in this candlelight, and I honor you, I put you on my altar, or just, you know, in my space to be honored, and bringing in that gratitude practice, just like we do with our meal,
Mhm.
that part of ourselves actually feels that unconditional love. And that is within us, right? That's like in here, in our filing system, right? Those memories in our hippocampus, they're like, oh my goodness, you know, that is this process of becoming whole and loving unconditionally, and releasing shame, and actually befriending the fear and befriending all of those parts of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I also have a practice of actually like visualizing holding myself, for instance, that infant that needed some more holding,
Mhm.
right? um yeah, there's many, you know, parts that you can do this of your lifetime, of your past, but really it's to allow them the space. So another great tool is to not only write a letter, you know, I'm a big fan of journaling, not only write a letter to that part of yourself, but then give that part of yourself the space to speak, to be heard, to be seen. And that is an incredible practice. And oftentimes in that practice, asking, well, what do you want? And or what do you really desire, right? Not just what you need. And sometimes it's like, I just want to dance, like, you know, or you know, of course there's some deeper emotions that usually always come out, and those need, but then once that process of allowing the emotions comes out, usually you know, when guiding people too, a lot of that times the little kid inside of them just wants to play and feel free, and freedom to express.
Mm.
And so that really comes back to, what is it that you really actually want? Like maybe you need to take a dance break, right? Maybe you don't need to like reach for the M&Ms, like for the dopamine, right? Maybe we just need to feel like we're allowed to like move and play. And usually that is what I've seen in myself and my little girl, and also with working with people that usually there's this aspect of adventure and play and freedom, because freedom can mean so many different things. But and that really means the freedom to be themselves and to be accepted and acceptable. And that is that process of being whole.
Nice. That's beautiful. What a great practice. So for me, I had two parents who loved me to life. I had a wonderful childhood. I never really thought I had much trauma. I've been so blessed. Yada, yada. I don't have any traumas. And here I am emotionally eating over here. So I'm like, okay, well, okay, here we go. We got to look at this. Where's this coming from? Didn't even know
Yeah.
I emotionally ate until we all decided to focus on emotional eating together. And I'm like, 90% of my eating is emotional eating. So
That's great.
where is this
I
coming
mean, that's great
from?
because you're being aware.
Right. And so now the curiosity is, okay, I can notice this. I know what I want to some degree, but there's still a large part of me that doesn't know what it wants. It knows it wants to be free from the grip of emotional eating and perhaps understand more of why am I going towards this comfort? What am I trying to avoid? How can I lean into that and find more spaciousness and freedom? So what would you suggest as far as when it's unclear what the limiting belief is, or why that habit has been adopted, when like those things are just not very clear? Is it necessary to gain clarity on what that thing is? Because what I've noticed is just in noticing it, I can soften around that a little more, slow down a little more. I don't necessarily need to know the root of it to dig it up. Just a hypothesis, but that's what I have to work with.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So the first thing I want to mention, bring it back to the science aspect, is sometimes it might feel emotional. Well, because it is, right? Every time we take in something, there is a chemical change happening. So
Yeah.
it's chemistry, right? Just like baking a cake. Like when we have a little strange oven going on in here with our liver bile and in our stomach. And I just want to mention that when we take in chemicals, and that is just the chemistry of life, right? Chemistry is actually means the study of change. So when we take in molecules of things, food, there is a chemical reaction within your body and your brain, right? Your brain is in your body, that are happening. And those neurotransmitters that are being released actually do create certain senses of perhaps euphoria for some, but also a heightened mood. We're not just talking about a caloric intake, we're talking about dopamine, essentially, right? And as most of us know, that's what happens when we take in sugar.
Yes.
So I just want to mention too, with emotional eating, cortisol really plays a big part in our whole system. So when we're stressed, in order for our nervous system to calm us down, we start to release something that's called cortisol. And that's what a lot of us, that's what's responsible for a lot of people's belly fat, is actually this particular thing that's creating a response for us to calm down. So the reason I'm talking about this is because, especially after the holidays, right, where we have been given this beautiful opportunity to take in lots of dopamine, right? Not only that, we're perhaps maybe not so much in this time, but we're oftentimes around more people. Oxytocin is happening. So we're, that's that beautiful chemical of love and community. And we also get that from doing things for others. So that community service. And so my point is, we just came out of the holidays. And so our chemical balance is most likely a little teetered. And so these chemicals will actually feel very emotional as well. So I'm just laying that groundwork out in terms of a very scientific level of things, the chemicals that are happening in your body. And so, especially when we're detoxing or there's less sugar around, it's going to feel even more so emotional. Like your body is literally going through a detox of a drug. So it might be pretty hard. And there are absolutely tools that we can, work on and bring into a system of getting off of something like sugar. Same with oxytocin. And by the way, oxytocin is amazing. I'm definitely not poo-pooing oxytocin. It's that beautiful chemical that we get from chocolate, community service, cuddling, and sex. So, that's like the sense of bringing in more like self-care. But in terms also of this like emotional sense, I would take a look at, and by a look, actually, let me rephrase. Oftentimes we think of like prayer as like asking. Well, meditation is the act of listening. So not only taking a look at like the different chemical responses that are happening from a shorter past, right? We're talking about just like maybe within the few months to right now. But you can actually slow down and take some pause and literally ask what's going on. What is feeling unfulfilled in my life? Because oftentimes we reach for that food because we're feeling unfulfilled. And again, that desire of what you want, I wonder if there's this limiting belief that's not letting you actually dream bigger and allow yourself to even stretch what it is that you believe you are allowed to have, not just something that you want, because you might actually not know what you want, and that could be that's a possibility. But also, like, have you or someone in this situation really allowed yourself to take the time to pause, to breathe, to listen, and really feel what it is that you desire? Because it's like a lot of times, most of the time, we as humans don't allow ourselves to go there because it's emotional and we are scared shitless, right? Like, we're scared of failure and we're scared of not achieving, and we're scared that, for instance, like love might be inconsistent, right? And so if we allow ourselves to go there and then it doesn't come true, oh, we're a failure, right? So it's really like, maybe not so much that, and I don't mean to project any of this, but just, some food for thought.
Yeah.
Is perhaps like, maybe it's not that you don't know what you want. Perhaps you haven't given yourself the space to feel into what you deserve and what you believe you can actually receive. And perhaps there's these limitless possibilities. It's like going beyond what you need and almost beyond what you want. But it's really like, do you believe you are allowed the space to even fathom what it is that you deserve and what it is that you may receive? And that, I think, goes a little bit more into the dreams. Because oftentimes as humans, we have plans, not dreams. And this is something that I'm learning about myself
Hmm.
in the last year, is this idea of cutting myself off to understanding the possibilities of dreaming. For me personally, it was because I was afraid of actually going there, because I was afraid of even trying on what those possibilities might be, because I was afraid from the past that I wouldn't be able to actually not just achieve them, no, but like deserve them and receive them.
Mhm.
So yeah, I wonder if there's, some ability of like limitless possibilities and allowing yourself to go there. Yeah, I'm curious what's landed.
That's definitely part of it. I sense a lot of it surrounds time and the
Yeah.
limits I put on myself with that.
Yeah.
Limited belief that I'm kind of like working through is time. That one's so hard for me to get around. And just to bring it to like a moment of slowing down with something, anything, but take an apple. I could savor the out of that apple if I give myself an hour. But the fear is you got so much to do, dude. I mean, you got so much you want to do. How much time do you really want to invest into this apple? And that's where my hesitation and my disconnect with my food is
Mhm.
all the other dreams and things that I want to go play with. And what's more important than what's happening is what I need to like come back to and let go of time being a constraint.
Yes. 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 I totally hear you. This is so relatable. I'm sure this resonates for lots of people listening. And oftentimes the feeling of urgency, that scurrying energy, if I may call it that, not to
Yeah,
project that on you,
yeah, totally.
um, it it has deeper beliefs, and again in that belief system of trust. And so, taking a look
Mm-hmm.
at trust, and in the yoga chakra system, that has a lot to do with our first chakra, right? Our roots and our foundation, right? Trust. It also has to do with our crown, right? Like what we are connected to. So that makes sense, right? Because you're like wanting to be connected to all of the things. But what if slowing down and eating that apple, and sure, you can take an hour, but you could also maybe just take 5 minutes to, or even, it's not about getting it perfect either. Maybe it's just that one of those bites, you are
Yeah,
completely present
yeah,
and you are calling in all parts of yourself. Like,
nice.
speaking to another tool of mindful eating is like when you're in that moment, you can literally like when you're doing that thing like and you're like trying, and you're like trying to talk to somebody while you're eating and clear like
Yeah,
cough or whatever. Divine catalyst, taking a breath.
yeah.
Can I receive one full bite and call in all parts of myself back to this present moment, and just even receive the gift of this one bite of this apple?
Mm-hmm.
And just starting there,
Yeah,
right? That's progress, right? And
absolutely.
I know you. I mean, you totally love food and you're totally a foodie, and I've seen you just be so present. And so maybe it's like, maybe not just that one bite, but maybe it's half the apple, you know? Maybe it's creating in your schedule a half an hour, hopefully more, but a half an hour of mindful eating. Because it really doesn't, a bowl of food, you can absolutely mindfully eat a bowl of food in half an hour. Like, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes That's usually for me. And that's slow, slow mindful eating, chewing. I know Megan mentioned 20 times a day. There's also a macrobiotics practice of chewing 100 times until your food becomes liquid.
Nice.
Right. But for you, in terms of urgency, I would ask you, what makes you feel like there's not enough? Right? Because it's like trusting that there's enough time, and trusting that you're getting enough done, and trusting that you are enough, and everything is happening around you, and you will get it all done when it needs to get done. And you are only but one man. And of course, you can also, delegate, right? That's another thing, is like asking for support. Where can you ask for support if you're feeling like time is, minimal? And I'm kind of glad we got here in the conversation, because I did want to mention that when we're feeling not enough and disconnected, right? Because it really is this like grounded, disconnected channel that we're hoping for in mindfulness and in presence. When we're really disconnected, can we, you or me, if we need to, reach out for support? And
nice.
I hear you. Like, I never feel like I'm getting enough done, right? And like constantly. And I wonder, is there a scarcity for chakra also with money and abundance? Where are we not actually, because money and abundance, this is an energy flow.
Yeah.
And it's like, where can we ask someone else to help us and support us with our time, right? To actually be able to enjoy the fruit, right? Meaning the apple, or the pleasure of playing, or what have you. But this also goes beyond just, the abundance with, hiring someone. But it's like, when we get disconnected, can we reach out for support with a friend and say, hey, I'm feeling disconnected. I don't feel like enough right now, and asking for help in that way. And that can be incredibly fruitful of a practice as well.
Nice.
I would like to offer you, because I love working with the goddesses. There is the goddess Bhuvaneshwari. She's the goddess of space and time in the universe. Bhuvaneshwari. And Bhuvaneshwari. So when I'm feeling urgent and rushed, I will call on Bhuvaneshwari. And that just means taking a breath and literally asking Bhuvaneshwari, the goddess of space and time, I believe from the Hindu religion, to please, I call in a little more space. And you might actually be extremely surprised. For me, it has brought lots of presence when I've called on her. And it actually feels like time does become a little more expansive. It's like when I have like 9 minutes, to like get to a call, I'll call on Bhuvaneshwari, and suddenly it's like, wow, when we are fully present with all of our senses, just how much of the fabric of life really just takes into shape and space. We start to notice all the space. Don't get distracted by all the space though.
Yeah.
So I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. Very helpful. Yes. Made me think of yesterday. I can see the garage from this spot, and I saw the light was on in there, and I was like, "Ooh, I need to go shut that off, save some power." So I run in there, I see something else, and I'm like, "Oh, I kind of like shuffle that around," and I do something else, get distracted, go into the house, I could do something in the house, come out into the yard, put away the hose, come back into the tiny house, and I'm like, the light is on. And I go out there and I have this very, very real deja vu, and just started laughing because I remember thinking when I ran out there, like, okay, this is like, got to remember to shut the light off. This is kind of like a waste of time when I forget to shut the light off because I have to just come back in, turn the light off. And then just kind of like walking back to shut the light off for the second time, I realized everything is just as beautiful and fine as it was the first time I came and to shut the light off. And I may have lost 10 minutes lost,
Right.
but here we are. It was just like a very real, like someone just came in and scooped 10 minutes out of my day, and yet everything was still totally fine. And it was like a
Yes.
fun perspective into my attachment to time and my worry of
Yes.
not enough time. And I mean, I don't have kids. I don't have, I have no excuse as far as how I structure my day and how much time pressure I give myself because it's all self-induced.
Yeah.
And so that you helped me realize a little more, and how can I ease up on myself and create that spaciousness, because for me that is when I am more inclined to know what I want and to spend my time focused on those things that I want. Whereas when I'm
Uh-huh.
then I'm not as tuned into those things that I want. And so I'm spending time scattered.
Yes.
And so more and more realizing I get twice as much done when I slow down, because what I'm doing is twice as important typically. And I mean, when it comes to the body, definitely, because the nervous system isn't shot trying to track all these things that I've piled up for myself to do. So, yeah, I'm more and more inspired to kind of cultivate that trust and
Mm-hmm.
spaciousness. And then from that spacious place, trust that what I need to focus on, whether it's the apple in my hand or whatever it is, that I'll just know and it'll just happen. And I don't need to have like everything lined up. And when it comes to intuitive eating, for me, I feel like that is what has been very helpful, is creating a little more spaciousness around it. Because then I'm more inclined to notice whatever there is to notice. And then I can be more present with the apple or whatever. And yeah, I don't need to spend 10. That's funny. My mind goes there like, oh, I don't have an hour to eat an apple. It's like, okay, Bert, you don't need to spend an hour to eat the apple. It's not like, I love
No.
it. It can just be that moment. Just like
Yes.
it could be literally a second of noticing and then deepening the appreciation, deepening what's happening, and then just savor it a little bit more. And that's been to alleviate a lot of the shame and guilt for me around my emotional eating. I'm like, okay, I'm setting the bar real low and I'm just going to focus on noticing, not necessarily like changing everything and flipping everything over and trying to reapproach how I approach food. It's just like,
Mm.
let's just notice and let change naturally occur by trust, through trusting the body and having the spaciousness to be able to listen.
May I reflect a little bit?
Please.
Okay, so first off, mm, I hear the desire for balance in masculine and feminine energies in a way. And in that, it's like the masculine principle is to focus and the feminine is to flow. It's like, I like to think of like the masculine as the canvas, right? Like, here is the masculine, here I am in this. But the feminine is all the paint that is everywhere. And we need both, right? Like, if I didn't have the construct, the paint would be everywhere. And like, who would even really be able to see it? It's on the ceiling. It's like over there on the trees, it's blah. Yeah. Blah. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we feel that, right? Like, or people that might have less schedule, the paint is just freaking everywhere. Right. Yeah. So we need the canvas, and then without the paint, it would be a blank canvas. It would just be a canvas. It wouldn't be a painting or a piece of art or a masterpiece. Yeah. So there is this sense that I'm feeling of like bringing in both, and of course there are tools and that can help with bringing in both of these aspects. So, in terms of the masculine, it would be like scheduling and eating time. I know that's not super sexy for a lot of people, but using Google Calendars or whatever calendar can be really helpful, and just choosing specific times, because you're actually, and everyone, if they have the privilege of having time to eat, in order to eat and really be mindful, it's like you're actually worthy of that. And that goes along with treating yourself in that way and really giving your body the space to feel like it's being heard, seen, loved, cared, and accepted, and honored. Yeah. Right? Because when we're doing that thing, like yeah, gotta get it all done. Yes, we're using our body to get to space and time, but oftentimes that's up here. That's our mind. Yeah. The other thing that this brings up to me is, you caught yourself saying like lost 10 minutes. And it's like, what if that 10 minutes of you gaining that gift and that lesson was actually priceless? And, yes, like time can be a currency, of course, but yet you learned something and you had this beautiful aha moment and you came back to yourself. And like, that's the beauty of life, is not, am I good enough? Can I show it by getting all these things done? It's, am I a good person? And how am I being in life? What's the energy I want to choose to be in? Yes, one of those things and values can be productive, right? Efficient as well. I get that, right? And that's that divine masculine principle along with the divine feminine principle, right? But it's like, what if learning was also one of those values? And I know it is. I mean, you're just such an incredible being of learning and sponging all types of information. And but yeah, it's like really coming back to choosing what's the energy we want to be and be in, like in love, right? And so I think there's this beautiful essence, and I can't believe we haven't really talked much about this, but there's like, am I operating out of fear or am I operating out of love? Fear would be the like, holy F bomb, I'm not getting enough done. And I'm so upset with myself. And like, yeah, of course we have goals and we can set goals, but it's like, can we accept it with where we're at? And can we actually love, right? So instead it's like, am I loving what I'm doing? Not how much can I get done? Yeah. How am I being, right? How am I being in life? Mm-hmm. And oh man, one other thing that this reminded me of is flow. And some people like to say flocus.
Flocus,
right?
yes.
Flocus. And so this has everything to do with really being in it and being like in love with what you're doing. And I studied flow a little bit, and it's fascinating. And it really does have to do with mindfulness, right? But it's like being here in the present moment. And I know I know we're here to talk about mindful eating, but if that's cool, I'd love to just mention flow for a moment.
Please, I think it's so related.
Okay, cool. So with flow, when in a state of flow, again, that is fully present with what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like wondering if this can equate to eating. I would say it equates a little bit more to cooking, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and being efficient, right? Because cooking is an art and a creative art. And so with these artful, creative places of flow, when we are in flow, we actually are 500 times more productive when we are fully on flow. Research shows. That means, if you really think about this, that means you could show up for Monday and not show up for the rest of the week. You would be just as productive if you showed up for Monday as you would for the entire week had you been in flow for one of those days. So just thinking about presence and mindfulness and what that means in productivity. What also has to occur with flow is that we have a certain, of course, like things are, there's always a leaderboard, right? Like you can always measure these things somehow in research, but our researchers say that there has to be a like 5 to 15% somewhere in there. There's a sweet spot, or maybe it's even 20 of challenge.
Yes.
There has to be this like almost like the word that wants to come through is strive, but there's like a little bit of challenge to keep you engaged.
Yeah.
And focused and focused. So I just wanted to kind of like, drop that in there. And we can absolutely do that. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't have time to cook. Well, actually, what if you allowed yourself just that mindful presence to be in it and to have fun with it, but like maybe try something a little bit new, or experiment in certain ways, or you're just in your A game, your regular, like, this is how I make this dish and this is how I do my thing on that too. But yeah, I love that idea. And I see and I hear that in you of, wanting to get all the things done. And when I like visualize you going to the shed to get the light off, I'm wondering if, everything is happening just as it is and you're right where you need to be. And in that way, for, I see this as like, that was a flow for you. And you're like, doop, 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 so
Totally.
like maybe you're just practicing flow state,
Yeah.
and that kind of takes out the shame in a way. But yes, obviously there is like a balance, and sometimes it's like, God, just focus. And that's that energy of the goddess Durga. We're just like, that sword, that I am this. This is what I am. I am focused. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, we got to wrap it up in a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm curious
Yes.
if, like, what would be one thing that you would suggest playing with today that's accessible for anyone, no matter where you're at, what you do, how many kids you have, what do you do for work? Doesn't matter. When it comes to what we've been talking about, slowing down, having a little more mindfulness around the food, cultivating that practice, what would be something I could just like put in my pocket and play with today to keep that practice going and keep cultivating that intuitive guidance?
For me, it always comes back to breath.
Mm.
Always comes back to breath.
So true.
We all have time to take 1 to 3 breaths of not just, our bodies they're amazing. Like your heart will beat, you will breathe, but can we just bring that holistic intertwining of our soul and mind along with it, right? To go, One breath. So taking a few breaths, 1 to 3 breaths before eating, will bring an incredible amount of mindfulness to the present moment. And gratitude, that's the other thing. 3 things you're grateful for.
Mm.
Boom, boom, boom. Whether it's the plate of food in front of you,
Nice.
right? Whether it's the fire that you made or got to just like turn the little dial. You know, how cool is that? We just get to turn a dial. I'm grateful for that, you know?
Right.
So I would absolutely say a practice of gratitude has hands down changed my life. Breathing and gratitude. Because it brings back that essence of meditation. The third tool, it might be a little more challenging if you haven't necessarily practiced this before or had guidance with it, but it would be to put down a grounding cord into the earth, all the way down into the center of the earth. Yeah, feel grounded, feeling your feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other pretty practical tool would be, am I hungry or am I uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
That's been a pretty mind-blowing practice. Yeah. I mean, there's so many, but those are the pretty like straight up, just breathe. But not just breathe, like, can you be fully present for one breath and be grateful that you have the ability to breathe?
Yeah. I took a breath last night and had another aha. I keep having ahas with the breath. I'm like, oh, that's why we keep coming back to the breath. And it's so layered and so juicy. But this
so
one,
layered.
I was like, I have to write it down. And it's right here. I was just,
Yes, please.
It's very short, but tuning into the breath brings me into my body, which takes me out of my inevitably flawed knowing. Because what do I really know? Very limited perspective here. And inspires me to trust the greater knowing, that is the great unknown of this collective unfolding. But that's what I noticed last night when I just like took a breath. I get so caught up with like, I know what I need to do. I know how this works. I know how I know. But it's like, just trust.
Trust. It really does come back to trust.
Yeah. But I like this.
And
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just reflecting on that too with the breath in yoga. This is the heart chakra, right? And it's an extension of our arms and our hands. And this part of our chakra is where we actually have the ability to give as well as receive. So it comes back again, I believe, to this idea of what do you believe you are allowed to give and receive, like not just allowed, but the ability to do both. And it's like when we take a breath, we're expanding and we're becoming full, just like when we take in food, right? And then the exhale has so much to do with this emptiness, but like being okay with being empty, right? In Chinese medicine, we inhale joy through our nose. It's like this taking in of joy. And then this exhaling is this movement of energy, and the lungs are actually the grievance organ in Chinese medicine, in traditional Chinese medicine. So it's like to have this flow and ebb and flow of life, like constantly like taking in and then letting go, but it's like surrendering, right? And it just reminds me of breath work. And as you know, I've been super into breath work.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's interesting is I do great when I'm full. I can hold my breath for so long, obviously, because, you know, you have all that 02. But I get so like, there's this moment of, and it's a practice. I'm getting more easeful and surrendering into it more and more. But there's this like really uncomfortable feeling of being empty. And it's like, can we also be present with being empty and also like okay in the discomfort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Such a good practice.
Yeah. The breath can show us so much. It's just wild.
Yeah. Back to the breath. Oh,
Yeah, I love what you said though about like knowing and not knowing, because like, what do we really know? And like all these things that we think we need to accomplish, like yeah, that's a whole nother. Yeah, lots of convo there.
next chapter. Well, just bringing this chapter in for a landing. I want to know more about you and your work in this world and the light that you share. Your website is jengens.com.
Correct.
And your handle on the socials, Jen Gens.
Yep, at Jen Gens, JenGens. You can find me on Facebook, and yeah, Instagram. And I'll also be at the Gather Retreat if that's something that your listeners might be interested in. That's January 29th through the 31st. I'm doing a talk on embodied boundaries and what that means. So it's right into intuitive eating and mindful eating as well, and what we believe in our belief systems. And yeah, I'm also a coach, as you mentioned, and I work specifically with women and female identified. Currently calling in more epic partnerships, as well as you know, understanding and cultivating connection in their relationships. And so I have an 8-month program right now, as well as a 1-month program for listeners to get a taste. And I also give free 45-minute calls so they can get a taste of what I do as well. So that is free. And I would love to give your listeners that option as well. So you can always reach out at Jen Gens or through my website, jengens.com.
Oh, beautiful. And I will put a link for all that in the description. Wherever you're listening to this, watching this, there are links nearby. Go find them. Connect with Jen. I would definitely take her up on this. She is a gem. And it is truly a unique gemstone. And thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and just your graciousness in wanting to connect and share and help us all on this intuitive eating journey. This was very helpful for me personally, and I know that many others will find all sorts of gems within it for them. So just thank you so much for your time and for doing what you do.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And obviously, we could talk for like days on this topic. So, like, so many good tools and, practical tools on the physical and also like the esoteric and getting into the energetics and the woo and the universe and all that stuff. It's like there's so much to be said. So, thank you, listeners and viewers, and Matt for taking this wild ride with me and the journey that is mindfulness and mindful eating. And I absolutely love Intention Inspired, and I'm always here to to reach out and comment and all that stuff. So absolute pleasure. I absolutely adore you. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of what you've created for the community out there. So I really reflect that back to you. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much.